Heineke lets it fly towards McLaurin in the end zone. Touchdown!
Terry does what Terry does.
Terry McLaurin is just on a whole nother level.
That is caught by McLaurin. Touchdown!
He is fast. He's got good hands. And one heck of a celebration in the end zone.
Yeah, Terry McLaurin is now locked in Washington after signing a lucrative 3-year extension with the Commanders worth up to $70 million. So many storylines in the NFC, per usual. I mean, this division always seems to be a bit of an enigma this time of year, all year, actually, if you think about it. But, Bucky, what's your favorite NFC training camp storyline to watch? And why don't we start with the Commanders?
Oh, it's all about Carson Wentz. Which Carson Wentz is going to show up in D.C.? Is it going to be the Carson Wentz that we saw in Philadelphia years ago where he played at MVP level? Or is it going to be the Carson Wentz that has disappointed since that season? Because if the Washington Commanders are going to compete in this division, they need to get great quarterback play. He has outstanding talent. He has outstanding toughness, but can he play consistently at a high level? Because if he can play consistently at a high level, they have a defense with enough talent to get them over the top. But a lot of the questions around the Washington Commanders centers around number 11. Which one is going to show up and play well?
The early returns are good on Carson Wentz, Bucky, and a lot of the reaction down there is, wow, this guy's ability. It's unbelievable. We're seeing it up close. Yeah, he's got ability. It's just been a rough couple of years for various reasons for Carson Wentz, so they believe that he is about to turn the corner and head back to the guy that they saw in Philly, now elsewhere in the NFC East. But for me, it's the defense for the Washington Commanders. Is Chase Young. Let's see him coming back from that ACL, how slowly he'll come along. I know that they do not want to rush him. They want him to come back at his own pace because they want him to be that guy that you're seeing right there, the guy that we saw before he was injured, because this defense went from being the second-ranked defense in the league a couple of years ago to the 22nd in the league last year. And if you didn't believe me, there it is right on the screen. I would say, though, a key for them, because I think they're going to be solid up front no matter what, is Jamin Davis, the linebacker, the first-round pick, who really struggled as a rookie because he was thinking a lot. And what they're trying to do is make sure he plays faster, not thinking so much. You can put him on the outside and let him create from out there. If you try to play him in the middle, seems like all of a sudden he's overthinking, he's playing slow. This is a guy that speed is a key part of his game. So let's see if he can come along. Let's see how comfortable he looks in training camp.
Yeah, I'm watching that defense, too, especially Chase Young, to your point, Mike. We heard not a peep about him last year. And, yeah, he was returning from that injury, but he was such a huge part, I think, when he's on and rolling. But you know he is upset that he hasn't been playing to the level that we know he can. So he's going to come out this year and give people a little something to worry about. All right, let's pivot step real quick to the Giants, Pioli. What storyline are you watching with them?
MJ, the important storyline to me is the overall team chemistry of the New York Giants while they go through training camp. But even more specifically, I think it's the chemistry of the offensive line. The Giants spent an awful lot of time, energy, and currency trying to fix the offensive line this offseason. It's going to be important for them to gel very quickly because they've got a quarterback they have to protect. You go back to early part of free agency, the Giants extended Mark Glowinski on a multi-year deal. They brought in John Feliciano from the Bills. Then they also added a couple of other veterans to compete for backup playing time. Then, of course, in the draft, Evan Neal was selected in the 7th with the 7th pick overall, and then they picked 2 more offensive linemen in the 3rd round and the 5th round. Overall, they have 9 new bodies in the offensive line in their offensive line room. So right now, the performance of the offensive line is directly going to impact the performance of Daniel Jones, Jane.
Maybe they should have kept Mark Colombo there helping the offensive line, Scott. But I'm with you. I'm really focused on what we can expect from this Giants offense, specifically when you've got a guy like Brian Daboll coming in. We saw what he was able to do with Buffalo and the way that we saw Josh Allen's game go to the next level. Is Daniel Jones capable of doing the same? I don't know if those are the two type of the same guys, but Brian Daboll, the feedback from a lot of those guys on offense is how he gels the team, how he brings out their personal best. And a guy that also needs to show us his personal best is Kenny Golladay. This is a guy that I mean, look, when you get extra O's added to that paycheck, you get extra scrutiny. Not one single touchdown last season. 2019, he led the NFL in receiving touchdowns. It was his worst season in 5 years. You could argue that had a lot to do with the quarterback play. That had a lot to do with the offensive line. He was getting that ball thrown to him by Matthew Stafford there in Detroit when he was having some of his best years. So I think offense as a whole and what Brian Daboll can do with this group is what I'm going to be keeping an eye on as we focus on training camp.
Yeah, a lot of questions about Saquon Barkley and how he will reemerge this year. I think he's ready for another huge year as well. What about the Cowboys, Jane? I mean, infinite number of storylines. Everyone says, hey, this should be their division, no question. Then the Eagles said, we have a word, one moment. So what are you watching with the Cowboys?
I love the word that you used to start the segment, enigma. I don't really know what to make of this team, and neither do a lot of the beat writers that cover the Cowboys. A lot of us have covered this team for a long time. Here's what I do know. There's kind of some frustration with Kellen Moore. In other words, it's hard to say that he's been a frustrating play caller when you look at the fact that since he's been associated with that offense, they've had a top 5 offense. But they still seem to come up short. And we're still talking about a team that finished the season 12-5. It's the way that they lost to San Francisco in the playoffs, I think, that left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. I think if that had ended a little differently, a little bit more competitively at the end, we might be thinking differently of this team. But that was our last thought of the Cowboys, and now we're also talking about an offense that's not going to have a guy like Amari Cooper. Of course, he's no longer there. Can CeeDee Lamb carry the torch? Are we going to see more of Ezekiel Elliott this year, or are we going to see a little bit more of Tony Pollard? Offensive line, well, you lost Connor Williams, and of course you also lost La'el Collins, although I would submit that I've been pretty impressed with this Tyler Smith, this young kid they brought in to be essentially a replacement for Tyron Smith down the line, but they're giving him a little bit of position flex. But I think some big question marks on this offense. If this defense can do what they did last season, and they were lucky enough to get Dan Quinn to decide to stay in Dallas and be defensive coordinator, that's huge for them. I think if they can get defense to continue doing what they were doing last year, that's a good thing. And you've got Dak Prescott, who continuously tells us in OTAs and minicamp that this is the best that he's felt in a while. We'll see how this all shakes out. And again, you got a lot of coaches that need to show up too when you consider all of them literally only have 1 year left on their deals.
Yeah, going off of Jane's point that this is a prove-it year for a lot of folks, I'm going to talk about the players. You mentioned the coaches. You know, when you look at Zeke Elliott, who has a cap number of $18.2 million this year, it's the second highest on their roster, and he's also $3 million higher than any other the next highest paid running back. He's going to his 7th NFL season, and there's been a steady decline since the dominant 2018 and 19 seasons when he got that big $90 million extension. At the end of the season last year, he told the world that he was playing with a partially torn PCL, but that's not going to matter. What matters is his performance. The other person is going to be Tyron Smith, who has a cap number of $17.5 million, 3rd highest. These players are going to have to play up to their contracts and their salaries, Jane.
Yeah, I think the onus is on everyone here across the board, from the players to every single coach there. I mean, it's not for lack of talent. They're putting up numbers on both sides of the ball, but yet the penalties that we saw last year, they were beating themselves. I want to see them clean that up because we already know the potential that this team has. Mike G, bring us home. What are you watching with the Eagles?
Give me that low-hanging fruit. MJ, I'm going to take Jalen Hurts. You know, this time last year, everybody was so skeptical in Philadelphia. Now it's like, how good can we be now? And the question is the quarterback. And this time last year, we were saying, hey, they've got 3 first-round picks. They can use those to move up for a quarterback. They can use those to trade for a quarterback. Well, they didn't do any of that, and they kicked 1 forward, so they've got 2 this year in a quarterback-heavier draft. But to me, this is going to be the end of his 3rd year coming up. He'll be eligible for a contract extension. So now you got to decide, do we want to commit to this guy long term? So that's the big question mark for Jalen Hurts is over this next year, can he show them that he can do more than that? Hang in the pocket, do what he's got to do to read defenses, move the defenses with his eyes, whatever you got to do to win from the pocket as a passer, needs to step up in that area to convince them that at the end of this year,